Welcome to the All That Jazz podcast with Matthias, and I have with me here Michelle Karén, and she is currently in Finland, but she's half Finnish, half French, and she's done many things in her life. Most importantly, right now, we're gonna talk about a lot of astrology and shamanism. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So I saw that you've authored and a lot of books as well, and this started early on in your life.
Yeah, well, I became an astrologer at the age of 14 to begin
Okay.
with, and I first wanted to be a writer. And my parents told me that this was not a job. But then I wanted to be an actress. That was not a job either. Then I wanted to be an astrologer. Well, that was not a job. So anyway, I ended up doing everything that my parents told me was not a job.
Right. So traditional parents, they wanted you to have a job, be happy, go to work.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they wanted me to be happy, but they definitely wanted me to have a job,
Right,
a,
right,
a
right.
normal job, a 9 to 5 job that had a salary that was secure and that would give me stability. And I took a completely different path. So yeah, I wrote those books. The first book I wrote, I was 21. It was a series of three short stories, and then I wrote a spiritual fairy tale, sort of a fairy tale for our times. And then I wrote my first astrology book, and then from there, so I think to date I must have written about 8 or 9 books. I'm not sure, something like that. Um, and I basically was very lucky because I was able to write what I wanted to write about. So I wrote some very varied things. I wrote a novel on yoga. I wrote a book on living food nutrition. I wrote 2 books on astrology. I wrote a spiritual fairy tale. I just went with the flow and wrote what I felt like writing,
That's
which is
amazing.
very unheard of because usually publishers like to put you in a box, and once you're in a box, that's where you should stay. And I defy all the boxes. So
Yeah. We don't like the boxes. We want original thought.
I'm a bit of a too free spirit here.
That's
I
fine.
do.
I think that's my life as well. People want me to have traditional things, and I've done I don't know. I've done different things. So what I'm
And
interested
that's
in, you said you wrote many books. How I wasn't planning to ask you this, but it just occurred to me. When you go about reading books, how do you stay in course to finish from beginning to end? Because some people get really excited in the beginning, but then the interest kind of wanes.
Well, my secret is that I never write a book in order. So, first of all, I'm the kind of person when I start something, I have to finish it. So, what I've done with all my books is that I've written all of them except the last one in 1 month. But during that 1 month, I lock myself up, no computer, no radio, no phone, nothing. And I fast for a month, and which means that when you fast, first of all, you have a lot more time because you don't have all the time spent in preparing food and going to get ingredients at the store, and then you sleep only 4 hours a night. So I live and breathe my book, and I never write in order. So if one day I'm sad, I'm going to write what is sad. If one day I'm happy, I'm going to write what is happy. And I have a system of little clips, so I know there are bits and pieces missing and where those bits and pieces go. But until the very end, I'm not sure myself of what it is that I'm writing. And in the end, everything fits together. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. So that seems like a fitting system because I've never heard that before. You base it on your emotions, and by the way, when you say fasting, do you mean you eat once a day, or do you fast like 5 days and not eat?
Complete fasting, complete fasting. Like either I'll do just water or I'll do the master cleanse with maple syrup and cayenne pepper and lemon juice and water, like 5 glasses a day of that, or just water. So because when you fast, first of all, your mind is a lot clearer and you're much more focused and you have much more staying power, but also your emotions are much cleaner. You know, you don't go through ups and downs, you're much more leveled. And then with that process, because I'm not writing in a linear way, I keep being excited with what I'm writing. So as I'm writing it, I'm reading it and discovering it, which is what happens when you read an exciting novel. You keep being excited because you want to know what's going to happen next. And if you write and you get bored, or you want to get quickly through a passage that's more longer or more tedious to get to the exciting part, then the reader is going to feel that that part was sort of gotten over quickly instead of really,
Wow,
developed.
that's an interesting point because I've read books of where it felt like it was tedious, but maybe it was tedious from my point of view only, but maybe perhaps it was also the writer that was bored, but decided to, I'm just gonna keep writing because I need to have this in the book, you know.
And that's a problem, and that's where I've been really very blessed that I was able to write what I felt like writing. So I wasn't in a state of, I have to write this or I have to fulfill a certain assignment. I just wrote what I felt like writing.
Very good. So you said, was it 1 month without eating at all? Because
Yeah.
what? I've done 5 days and I thought that was a lot, but wow, that is amazing.
Well, not really, because, I mean, there's a way, of course, to cleanse yourself, and I usually do this during the summer months, so where it's very hot. So you get fed by other things. You get fed by the sun, by the trees, by, just other things. But I don't eat much anyway as a normal, I just eat once a day anyway as a normal routine. And when my mother died, you always think that my mother died in my arms, and when you always think that the last words somebody is going to tell you are like philosophical and life-changing and profound. And the last words my mother told me was, Michelle, don't forget to eat. I was like, what? That was supposed to be like something meaningful and deep and philosophical. But I guess it was important.
She knew
Yes,
you, she knew about your fasting, and she wanted to remind you not to forget to eat.
yeah, I know.
And
But
so,
I think that once your frequency starts to raise, you don't need to eat so much, or you eat very differently, and I think everything is a question of frequency and vibration. And the more the happier you are, and the more positive you are, and the more engaged you are with life, and your body starts to feed through all sorts of other means, which is not necessarily physical food,
right,
if that makes
right, okay,
sense.
like you're talking about feeding from the spirit, almost the soul.
Absolutely, yeah,
Do,
absolutely.
do you believe that people can live more than a month just on? Because I've heard people do that, and some people take it to the extreme, and then they die.
Well, you need to, I mean, I think it's important to listen to your body, and I won't say that I fast all the time for a month. Sometimes I just fast for a day, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes for a week, sometimes for 5 days, sometimes for 2 weeks, but I listen to my body. So I don't decide mentally, I'm going to fast for a month because I don't know that.
Okay.
And what is also very important is to cleanse yourself. So do enemas, colonics, so that you get rid of all the toxins. And of course, breathe, do some yoga, and don't exert yourself too much. And listen and sleep. In the beginning, you may need to sleep a little more. And then after a while, after, 4 hours of sleep is going to be enough. But
Right.
listen to your body. That's very important. And I think those people who die, it's because they just didn't listen to their body. They just went in their mind, that's what I'm going to do, or somebody did that and I can do the same. And everybody's different.
Right.
Like I
Right.
live most of the time in Arizona. Well, when it's 49 degrees Celsius, you definitely don't need as much food than when it's minus 40 Celsius, So it's also the conditions you find yourself in. And also, it's different if you're not dealing with anybody during a month and you're not answering the phone and you're not dealing with emails. It's very different than somebody who is lifting weights or moving, being a mover or having, being in contact with 300 or 400 people a day. And of course, when I'm in contact with 400 people a day, which does happen when I give my conferences, I eat, of course, a lot more than if I'm alone and in my own space.
Right. So it's all about getting used to it because I found when I first tried to do 3 days, I found that on day two I felt really weak, but I was like, I'm gonna continue. So I forced myself to reach day three, and I don't know if that
That
was a
can,
good thing.
well, your body is going to tell you what you need, and at some point, 3 days may be enough, or 2 days may be enough, or one day may be enough. So once your tongue becomes clear, but it's important to cleanse, to do colonics, to fast, when you fast, to do enemas, so that you really get rid of all the toxins, and then you won't have migraines and headaches and feel like you're going to die. All of that is not going to happen.
What is
So
that colonics?
cleansing the colon,
Okay.
really flushing the colon out. So it's like an internal shower, if you want, or like brushing your teeth. It's the same concept. And a lot of illnesses start in our colon. So if we don't cleanse our colon, we are always going to be in a position of attracting illnesses because illnesses don't just happen. You
Right.
know, it the mind and the body go together. And once we are able to be clear in our body, our mind is going to be clear and our emotions are going to be clear. And I think it's very important nowadays because we're going through so much chaos in the world right now. And there's so much negativity and people are so afraid. And if you can keep your body clear, then your mind is not going to be going through all the ups and downs of what is going on in the world. And
Right.
you're going to be more leveled and deal with things with more calm and more focus and more clarity.
So to just to finish this up to heal your colon, would you recommend a longer fast, or is it perhaps a little salt there, or what would you recommend?
No, no salt, just water, just
Just water.
lukewarm water. And really, it's about listening to yourself, Don't try to do things as a feat or to say, I did this or I succeeded in taming my body or, I don't believe in that kind of discipline that comes from the mind. You know, like I was a chocolate addict for a long time
Right.
because I lived in Switzerland. I grew up in Switzerland. Everybody in Switzerland eats chocolate, you know, and then in Finland we have, I think, some of the best chocolate in the world. So, you know, it was a natural thing to eat chocolate, but I was really an addict. I mean, I was eating a lot of chocolate. And I tried to curb myself and to stop, but that was my mind saying that. And then one day, naturally, I realized that I had, you know, chocolate in my cupboard that I hadn't touched in like months. And I realized I had won because it wasn't my mind saying I don't want to eat chocolate. It was my body saying, no. And that's it.
Right.
So it's very important to listen to your body because at different times, you know, I believe that 80% we should eat well and 20% whatever you want, you know, whatever you feel like, so that we don't become excessive in anything. Excess in anything is never good. And
Right. I
that's
like
our
that.
mind talking, and it's not listening to our body. And I believe we should always listen to our body. And sometimes we need to sleep more, sometimes less. Sometimes we need to eat more, sometimes less. Sometimes we need a piece of chocolate, sometimes not, you know. And sometimes it's good to fast, sometimes it's not. So it's about really being moderate in all things, but also tracking ourselves, being aware, because everybody is different. And also at different times of our lives, we need different things.
Right.
You know, there have been periods of my life I was complete vegan, periods of my life where I felt I needed a little fish, periods of my life where I was just vegetarian. So it's just listening to what is required for us to be functioning at our full capacity.
What is your opinion of veganism? Are you yeah, like you said before, I don't think you must be this, you must be that. It just, I guess for you, it just felt right at that moment in time. So you were vegan?
No, I never liked meat, even as a child. So it was not even a mental, philosophical thing, because my parents were ate meat, you know, and of course they served me meat when I was a little girl. But I never liked it. I never had a taste for it. And as soon as I was living on my own, I discovered that you actually could survive being a vegetarian. So I became automatically a vegetarian at the age of 21. And I never turned back. Never, never. And actually, the one time somebody gave me something that had meat in it and I did not know, I threw up. It's like my body had an immediate reaction. And it was not a mental reaction because I did not know this thing contained meat. So it just came naturally to me. It was not something. And then when I was writing my book on living food nutrition, I did a lot of research on raw food, on sprouting, all of that. And that period of my life, I was completely vegan. It was about 10 years of my life. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, you know, my lifestyle changed. I was involved in acting, I was in modeling, I was in different things, and I started adding fish from time to time, but very rarely, and dairies, but very rarely. So, you know, I go with the flow now, really.
Right.
This is,
So you said at
so
age 14,
most of the time I'm raw and vegan, most of the time, but not completely. But
like
I never
raw,
eat
not
meat.
even cooked, just like
Yeah,
vegetables and fruit.
yeah, exactly.
Hi.
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned astrology, and you said it started early on with you, and at age 14, and then you
Yes.
became, it says here, at age 17, you enrolled in a faculty of astrological studies in London. Can
Yes,
you
I
now,
did.
like, let's say, can you, if somebody gives you just the time of birth and the place of birth, are you able to predict with pretty much accuracy how that person is going to be in life?
Yeah, I need also the time.
What
But even
about,
without
okay,
time, you can still give an accurate reading, yes.
what about the if can you tell if a person is good or bad?
No, you can't say that because a chart, it's a picture of the heavens when you were born. So depending on where the planets were, first of all, we are not born randomly. We choose our time of birth based on the karma we have to work out. So we choose our parents choose us or accept us. And so it's a mutual agreement. And then we choose a specific time and a specific place and a specific date.
Wait.
And
Okay, how do parents choose you if your parents are here and you are on the other side, or does that happen like because like isn't there
no,
an element of
dream
chance?
time.
Sorry.
No, there isn't. It's
Okay.
not random at all. And there is an element that happens in dream time, that happens when we sleep, when our soul leaves our body and goes in other places.
Okay.
So an agreement is created between a soul who needs to incarnate and parents who are ready or not to receive a child. And even if if it's a child that was not wanted, on some level that child was wanted on some level. So we choose our time of birth, but of course we don't randomly choose that, otherwise we would all choose something extraordinary. And there is no good or bad time of birth or date, because every date, every chart, every crystallization, we are each a crystallization in time and space, has its positive elements and its challenges. So it's like the ingredients of a cake. And in themselves, the ingredients are not good or bad, but it's a consciousness of the person, of the soul, using those elements that can make them good or bad. So with the
Right.
same ingredients, you can burn your cookies or you can make a sumptuous cake. It's the
Right.
same with what the tools, the cosmic tools we were given at birth. And throughout our life, we are also going to use those tools differently. Like, for example, somebody who has Saturn in the fifth house in Capricorn, that could make the person be, have no love affair, or be very depressed or very sad or very lonely or very, solitary or very insecure romantically. That's one reading of that. But as time goes, that person can actually become very wise and understand love, not so much as something that comes from the outside, but something where that person needs to love themselves and feel complete within themselves. And then they will attract a mature relationship, or they will understand romance in a more mature way, and they're going to be able to live a very good relationship that is not based on illusion, that's based on something very rational and very grounded.
Right. So would you say that the astrological chart is a set of potentials, let's say, and what you do with it, it's basically on it falls on the kind of the soul. Like I see where you're also in the works of Carl Jung. So the process of individualization is that's the process where you actualize your talents.
Absolutely. And I think the purpose of life, of any lifetime, is to reach enlightenment. And a lot of people are always asking me, what about my past lives? So, of course, it's always exciting or a curiosity to know where we came from. But the most important is this lifetime. And what do we do in this lifetime? Because I see so many people say, oh, I was a high priestess in another past life. Well, that's great. But who are you in this lifetime? Or I was whatever, Cleopatra, which we don't know if that was true or not, but well, who are you in this lifetime? And that's what is important. And every lifetime is a chance to reach enlightenment. Every lifetime is a chance to fulfill our highest destiny. And more, and we need to give. I mean, you mentioned that I did a lot in my life. It's always interesting because that's always something that people tell me when they read my biography. um, and in my sense, I don't feel I did that much, but I just try to live every day as fully as possible and have meaning in every day. You know, that everything I do, I try to do as completely as possible,
Right.
and with as much passion as possible. So, and I'm excited. I'm always curious about things, you know. That's why I love to travel. That's why I love living in different countries, because I love reading and meeting people and understanding what makes people tick or what makes people become who they are. It's
Right.
fascinating to read people's biographies,
You
you
know,
know.
if because you said I noticed a trait in you that I noticed in some other successful people, which is if you do something you want to do 100% and you want to finish it. Well, I sometimes notice with myself is sometimes a lot of times I half-ass certain things and then it doesn't turn out well. But can I blame my astrological chart? Are you able to point it at the chart and be like, you know what? It's not your fault. Is this Saturn square Jupiter that's messing you up? Is that right?
You know what? That's such a temptation, and so many people want to blame Mercury retrograde or whatever's going on. Honestly, we need to take responsibility for ourselves, you know, because this, especially now, we are in a time where we have to reach mastery. And you can't reach mastery if you're going to blame something or someone or the stars or your sign, because it's not true. You know, these are potential, but it's what you do with that. And we have a responsibility, and I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's fun, but you know, the result and the sense of accomplishment you get when you went to the end and you pursued no matter what the obstacles were, and you did it anyway, and you didn't give up, and you kept persisting into, I'm going to make this happen. And I think the difference between people who sort of float through life and people who achieve something of significance is that they never gave up in the face of adversity. They kept going, and they kept saying, okay, I fell, but I'm going to continue. You know, it's like a little child. You know, if a child, when he's trying to learn to walk, every time he falls, he gave up, we would still be crawling today.
Right.
And
That's
because
true.
the child fell and then got up and then fell and got up and fell and cried and hurt himself, but got up and eventually was able to stand. And this is what we need to do in life. You know, no matter how many times we fail, one time we're going to succeed. And
Right.
if we keep having that consciousness in our mind, we are going to succeed.
So you would agree with Winston Churchill, which is with his famous "never, never, never, never give up." When he went, I think,
Thank you.
yeah,
And
um,
even in love, you know, people tell me, oh, I've had two divorces, or I've had like such bad relationships, or, well, let's think that the best is in front of us, not behind us. And if we start to think that the best is in front, we are going one day to succeed. And people say, oh, well, I'm in my 50s, I'm in my 60s, it's too late. It's never too late. As long as there's life, it's not too late. You know, I had one client, she was in her 80s and she had a horrible love track record. You know, her husband was cheating on her. I mean, it was just awful. And in her 80s, she finally found the strength to divorce this man. And she met the love of her life in her 80s. And he was 82 and she was 80. And they were like little lovebirds. You know, it was beautiful. But she didn't give
wow.
up. And that's beautiful. And I think, and that's what I learned, you know, it was really wonderful as a European to move to the US and to see the way Americans function, because I really learned so much from America and living in America. And now I'm American too. I
Right.
got my passport. But, you know, Americans don't have anything on starting over at any age. And I love that. I think it's incredible. And in Europe, we tend to get on tracks and stay on those tracks and sort of get comfortable. Americans never get comfortable. They keep challenging themselves. They keep, you know, at 50, 60 years old, they start to study law, or they divorce cross country, sell everything, and start over. I find that remarkable. And I
Right.
think that's how we should live, that every day is the beginning of the rest of our lives. Every day we can reinvent ourselves and we can go on a reset.
This reminds me, one time I had this dream that I told my Christian friend, and this dream was, it was like a life, and it was my life, and it was a big book. And this dream was like, kind of hinting that, you know, at any page you are, you can always start, you can always cross and turn the page and start a new page. And my friend caught on the symbolism of that, because I was just relating a dream, but my friend was saying, well, this is really important, Matt, because at any time you can change the page and you can start a new page, a fresh page, anew. So I was like, wow, this is really powerful. And I try to remember that lesson, because it's like, because sometimes I feel like, well, this is not working, or this is not good. But if I remember that lesson, that at any time I can start again, that's good. So back to Americans. Beside that, what do you think is other main differences between Europeans and Americans?
I think Americans are not afraid to work, and because the social system is not as comfortable as in Europe. You know, for example, in France, if you need a plumber, you may wait for 3 weeks before they, you know, come. Whereas in America, within half an hour, you've got 10 plumbers giving you each an estimate better than the other, and they are willing to work. And I find that beautiful, you know, that we have, and consumers are kings in America. And new, everything that is new is exciting, and they're not afraid to be innovative and to start, you know, to do things that have never been done before. Where then in Europe we tend to be also quite critical, negative. And I think Americans are very positive, very grateful. They have a lot of an attitude, a very positive attitude, an attitude of creators. And I think they're extremely professional. I learned enormously from Americans, you know, saying
That's
yes to things and not saying
that's
no all the
wonderful.
time. And I do get sometimes a little frustrated when I return to Europe and people are like, no, I can't, or no, or, and you know, compliments in Europe, it's like, oh, you've got a nice dress. Well, I bought it 10 years ago and it has a little tear here. And it's like, just shut up, say thank you, and that's it, you know? Just thank
Have
you.
you
Take it
have you
in, take it
yeah,
in, that's it.
have you ever
That's
been
what
in
I've been saying to
UK?
my European friends, to be grateful and say thank you and not go into negative things.
Have you ever lived in the UK, United Kingdom?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Actually, when I was 1 year old, my father was working at the on the Finnish program at the BBC. So between the age of 1 and 5, I lived in London. And then later on, when I was studying astrology, I actually returned and I got a chance to work in Glastonbury as an astrologer. And I lived there for a year. So
Do you
yes,
think that the UK's attitude is much like Europe, or are they a bit similar to US?
I think it's a mixture, it's a balance. I mean, I really haven't been back to England in many decades, so I don't know how things are now.
Mm,
But from my memory, I would say that it was probably a balance of the two.
okay.
But it's
Do you
still a
ever
European country.
Going back to astrology, do you ever read somebody's chart and be like, "Ooh, this person is in trouble. This is a tough life."
Well, some people have, a more difficult journey than others, but I wouldn't say that somebody is doomed ever. We can be going through some challenging times, but that's a nice thing about astrology is that it gives you a timeline and you know how long that period is going to last. It could be a month or a week or 6 months or a year or 2 years. But it's never, there's always positive elements that help balance things that are difficult.
Right.
So I
So,
wouldn't say, character, Alan Leo, who was a great English astrologer of the 19th century, said character is destiny. And that's true. Some people who are very detailed, very realistic, very pessimistic, may have a bit of a harder time than those who are sort of happy-go-lucky kind of people.
right. It seems like character is because I was into Churchill a lot, and Churchill early on he realized that he had a lot of bad characters, so he started to try to almost like kill off the bad character defects that he had about himself. I don't know how successful he was, but he turned out to be a great man. So he did all right. So yeah, so not so you it could essentially a positive message. You're like, whatever you are, this is the cards you dealt with, even in astrology, but you can always move on, and you can always build on that. And is your in your astrology, do you if you see something, a pattern in somebody's life, do you recommend that they do certain things or that they focus on this? Or
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. There's always solutions to every challenge. And the purpose of a reading is not to be gloom and doom and say, okay, you poor you, that's it for the rest of your life, you are doomed. It's like, okay, well, you have this challenge, but here are things or steps you can take in order to transform this challenge and to make it an opportunity, to make it something positive that's going to help you. And and if you look at the charts of successful people, most of them have a chart that you would not, that's not easy. And some people who have a very easy chart, they don't necessarily amount to anything because they don't have to overcome anything. So, challenges are not a bad thing at all. Challenges
right.
are what help us grow and shift to another level. So and there is hope in every lifetime, every whatever cards you were dealt at the beginning of your life, even if you were born in a very poor family or with very violent parents or with very negative parents or no parent, or no matter what the beginning of your life is, that's usually when you encounter your karma. And the whole purpose of each lifetime is that we get a chance to end our life in a better state than we started. And if
Mm-hmm.
we end our life in a worse state than we started, then that's not necessarily a super successful life. But maybe that was also the lesson we had to learn so that our next life will do better. And we always have a chance to do better.
All right. So, but then the next lifetime will be harder because people will be born in a maybe somewhere in China where they are a political prisoner, and there'll be tough lessons.
I don't know. It's very mysterious, the process of reincarnation. I've done a lot of past life regressions on people, and in my experience, it's not linear. And sometimes we have to repeat a lesson in different forms until we finally get it.
What do you mean by
Um,
the lesson isn't that it's not linear?
That, for example, a person can have a very amazing lifetime where they were very successful or they were very revert or they accomplish some pretty incredible things. And then the next lifetime could be very low and uninteresting, or they could regress even, lose the talents that they had. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the secret of how it works. I wish. I've always been fascinated by that. But in my experience, it's not linear.
Right.
So,
Going back to something you said earlier, when you say the purpose of life is enlightenment, obviously you're not talking about intellectual enlightenment. You're talking about a spiritual enlightenment, and enlightenment as in Buddhism or Hinduism, which is the kind of the uprooting of the personal ego and the merging with the divine, let's say.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's spiritual enlightenment in the sense of our soul. What is most important is our soul and the goodness of our soul and the growth of our soul, and really embodying, releasing ego. And when I say releasing ego, we need our ego, but a healthy ego, not an arrogant ego, not I'm better than others, or
Right.
but an ego where we have a strong sense of who we are and strong boundaries and a clear purpose, but at the same time we are open and flexible and to growing and learning and bettering ourselves.
Do,
And to me, the soul is important, the goodness of our soul being as respectful, as loving, as compassionate, as sensitive, and as strong as possible. And strength is important, very important.
do you agree that some events in a person's life are preordained, as in predestination, or maybe you agree to them prior to their lifetime? Like I've heard it said that some people maybe agreed that they're in 9/11, or some people agreed that they're in this car accident, or whatever the case may be. Do you think there is an element of that? That there's a predeterminism element of human life?
Absolutely. I think we do choose the very big events, like, like it amazes me how people meet, for example, and sometimes there is one person we need to meet, and it took like 20 people we had to meet over 20 years in order to get to that one very important encounter that is going to change our lives, or is going to put us on specific tracks. So yes, I absolutely believe that some of the great lines are pre-chosen, preordained. I believe we always have choice, but once we have chosen something, then we are kept to it. We have to fulfill that. We can't choose and then say, I don't like this anymore, or I don't want this anymore. But we still have free will in the road we take. So it's a balance of destiny and free will.
Right,
Does that make
right.
sense?
Churchill famously said that there's he thinks free will and predetermination are the same thing, which I'm still like, I don't totally agree with that, but I think your explanation is I think I like it better, because I don't like earlier you mentioned that if people just like try without giving up, they can achieve much. But I don't know if you know, there's a Hindu mystic, Ramana Maharshi, and he said, whatever is destined to happen will happen, and try as you might, it will happen. But whatever is not destined to happen will not happen. But try as you might to make it happen, it will not happen. And then he concluded that the best course of action is to be silent. So if that is true, what he said, then it would come to reason that some people maybe are just born to be failures, and whatever they try will just turn to Well, you know what?
No, I don't think anybody was going to be a failure. Well, then what's the point of living? We can just throw ourselves through the window. I mean, we're done, what's the point? But no, what I believe, I like what Maharshi says. I don't think that we should necessarily be silent, but I think we need, we have to see. It's like cats. I lived with two master cats, and I learned so much from my cat. My cats have a very healthy ego. They stand there and they say, "This is what I want. I may get it, I may not get it, but this is what I want." And then when they start to see that what they want is not coming, and they keep having obstacle after obstacle, they still persevere, but they don't go crazy in their persistence either. And at one point they say, well, okay, that's not going, so let me do something different, or let's go somewhere else. It's like, Bruce Lee said, be water, my friend. And that's beautiful because water goes around and is flexible, and we can still want something, but if we push too hard, we may start to create something complicated. And I've seen that, for example, in parents who are so obsessed with having a child, and it's not happening, and it's not happening. And I look at their charts, and clearly in this lifetime, this is not their path to have a child. And yet they try, and they try, and they try, and they try. And now there's artificial insemination, so they can even succeed in having a child. And all of a sudden, they find themselves with major problems that if they had just listened and realized that maybe this was not their path, then
No,
they would
no, but
have.
listen, they were trying not to give up. They were trying, never, never, never
And
give
that's
up.
and that's a fine line. You have to see where is it good to not give up, and where are you persisting so much that maybe it's not the right course of action.
Right,
And
but it
that's where
needs
we
the
have to
wisdom.
always listen. This
Ne-
is where we always have to track things.
Right,
And this is a balance between free will and destiny. And, there is certain laws in the universe, I mean, the law to not kill, the law to not, there are certain laws. And we can take the long road or the short road. And that's where astrology, I find, is amazing, because astrology is going to gives you a map for your life, and shows you how to make the best of the circumstances that you are presented with, and how not to lose time or to get stuck in things that really are not necessary. It's like,
right,
do you want to take the scenic route, or do you want to go, take the freeway, or do you want to get lost? And that's where our free will is. But, and astrology is going to give us a roadmap so that whatever destination we want to achieve, it's going to say, well, maybe that's not the best course of action, or maybe this is not the best place to live, or maybe this is not the best person to get involved with. And astrology can give us so many pointers that are going to help us get a very fulfilling journey and not lose too much time en route.
right. So, I'll give you an example. Because I know a little bit of my astrological chart just by memory, because I was really into astrology when I was a teenager, and I think my midheaven is in Sagittarius. So, if I remember correctly, that meant that it's something about teaching or public life. Is that true?
Well, the midheaven represents your place in society. You know, it's your career, but it's more than that. It's really your place in society. So, Sagittarius, that would mean that you really are about expansion and philosophy and religion and spirituality, but also other countries, you know, traveling. So, that would make you somebody who really wants to expand consciousness through the career that you choose
That
and
sounds pretty good.
open positive horizons for others.
Right. But okay, I get that. But if somebody's midheaven was in Capricorn, let's say, would that mean that that person is destined to be more at home, kind of like, practical, mechanic,
No,
plumber?
that would be somebody who's very ambitious for one, somebody who really needs to be the top of their job. So not somebody who works for someone else, but somebody who would like to be the CEO or the boss. Somebody who wants to be at the top of the mountain, and somebody who's going to climb in a very gradual way, but will really seek the summit. And somebody who's definitely going to want to be very practical, realistic, very grounded, but extremely ambitious. That's for
Okay,
sure.
so I saw that you were doing in the 78th Academy Awards, you were the astrologer. How does that work? I didn't even know they had like an official astrologer. Do you like recommend a
Right.
starting time? Do you recommend a date for it? Because I think the date is already uh,
No,
chosen.
no, it was actually each Academy Awards, I found that out, I didn't know either, has a theme. And that year, the theme was mystic. And it's a week going to the Academy Awards. And there are all sorts of festivities that are offered to the movie stars that are being nominated that year, but also other movie stars. It's not just those movie stars. And so for a week prior to the Academy Awards, I was invited in this mansion in Hollywood, and I was offering readings to whoever wanted to get a reading. So I met, you know, all the definitely the movie stars that were nominated that year. I was also interviewed by journalists and television from various countries, and it was a lot of fun. I met some very interesting people during that week.
Whose chart was like the most kind of like, wow, this is you're going to be an actor now, but maybe you'll be a politician in 10 years, you know?
Well, I can't really reveal
Okay,
names because
okay.
that's
Sorry.
private, but I can tell you one thing is that there was this red-haired actress, very sweet, from Australia, and she wanted a reading, so I gave her a reading, and she was really, you know, not famous at all. And I looked at her child and I said, "Wow, you're going to be huge. You're going to be really, really famous." And she was very sweet, and she said, "Oh, that's cool," and you know, like, okay, great. And now I have seen her in so many movies, and I'm so excited every time I see her because I'm like, yes, I predicted that.
Wait.
So,
So you just said that from the chart you can predict if a person is gonna be big or not. So there's an element of predestination already in the in
I
the
saw
astrological
that she
chart.
was coming. Well, I saw that she was coming to a time of great opportunities in her chart,
Okay.
and that she was really, it was going to be a time where she was going to be very popular. It was a time where she was going to be very visible in the public eye. So it happened that it was just in that period, but that period can continue beyond that period.
Right. So
So everybody has a chance, but some people, it comes in a different manner, you know. But for her, because she was already an actress, but she was not famous at all when I met her, and now she is. So I'm
right.
very proud of
So
her.
you're talking about a progress chart. Basically, it's not just a natal chart, but the chart going forward and how it changes through time. Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we go through cycles. And for example, the slow-moving planets like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they, depending on where they are in our natal chart, so based on our date of birth, time, and place, we for example, Pluto, which takes about between 10 and 30 years to go from one sign, is not going to go through our entire chart during our lifetime. So depending on where it was at our birth, it's going to cover 2 or 3 areas of our lives, but not every area of our life. So some people have more of a chance to be famous than others, if that makes any sense.
Right. So mine's in Scorpio because a lot of that generation is well, I think it's like 15 years or whatever. Yeah.
But
And,
it depends on which house. The house is important, not just a sign. But
mm,
that's important. What you were saying, for example, the whole generation of Pluto in Scorpio, that was a generation where it became obvious that they had to have, that was a generation of AIDS. That was a generation of becoming very responsible with sexuality and understanding that you couldn't just randomly have sex with just whoever. So there was a deeper understanding of sexuality. Whereas, for example, Neptune and Libra, that was the flower power hippie generation where it was about peace and love and community living and all those things. And then when Pluto came into Virgo, that was a generation of being organic, recycling, becoming very aware of our resources, the earth resources. Pluto and Cancer, that was a generation of creating the fridge and the freezer, to conserve food. Every generation astrologically has a specific mission to fulfill. And that's exciting
right.
to
So you can
see
track
how it
everything that
changes.
happened to a
Absolutely.
progress chart because you can see how it changed over time and you can see the general trend. Are you seeing now that we're going through a massive change for the better or for the worse? I hope not for the worse.
But change is always disruptive, but is always for something different to come. So whether it's going to be better or worse, it depends on how we deal with things. But for example, the minute Jupiter entered Scorpio, and Jupiter has to do with integrity, and Scorpio has to do with sexuality, that's when we started talking about the Me Too movement, and where we started talking about sexual abuse and sexual pedophile rings and human trafficking. All of that came when Jupiter was in Scorpio, and it happened almost to the day that it came into the news.
Wow.
Almost to the day. It was unbelievable.
Did that change now? Did that sign change already or
Yes, well now, yes, absolutely, because now Jupiter is in Capricorn. So now it's everything having to do with people in positions of power and, the integrity of big companies, the integrity of everything having to do with governments and people in positions of authority. All of that is being questioned right now.
right?
And we have also at the same time Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. So all of a sudden, a lot of questioning is happening of the lack of integrity of governments, and some big corporations also.
Were you ever into the work of Alice Bailey by any chance?
Yes, I was. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you make of because I'm reading one of her books and the only prediction I saw was the 2025 prediction that the book is called Glamour, a World Problem. about the energy of glamour, but it said that in 2025 the energy of glamour is going to change. Is that something that can be predicted as well with astrology, that there is something that's going to
Absolutely.
happen in 5 years?
Well, I think sooner than that. I think by the end of 2022, we'll really see if humanity succeeded or not, because things are probably going to get worse before they get better.
That's
And
what I
we're
keep
probably,
saying. I'm keep
yeah,
saying things are getting worse before it gets better, because I can
yeah.
see the trend and the overly politicization of everything, and but at the same time the pedophile rings and all that are coming to the surface, so it's going to be a lot of heads rolling, I think.
Absolutely. But until 2000, and we're just in that middle of that period that started in 2017, is ending at the end of 2022. And not a lot of people are talking about that period, and yet that period is key in the evolution of humanity. And either we fail as humankind and we fall into, violence and anger and negativity and corruption, or we get our act together, we take responsibility, and we create a new world, which is going to be a better world.
Right.
But that period now, and it's not necessarily that things are so much worse than before, but they're more visible than before. And everything is coming to the surface. So it's almost like we are in the spinning cycle of the washing machine right now, where every darkness is emerging. Now, with the internet, with YouTube, with Facebook. I mean, what is happening in one corner is immediately visible all over the planet, and people can't just be hiding. Everything is in the open, and it's good, it's very good, because all this darkness that has been brewing under the surface is now being exposed, and once it's exposed, it gives us a chance to transform it.
Right. So would you say the best thing one can do is spiritual progress, or do you think there is, depending on who you are, you still have some role to play in doing some other things?
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that.
Well, I think people have different roles, you see. So, like some people are in positions of power, some people have the ability to go out, and some people protest. But I'm not usually a big fan of protesting because I don't think it does much good. But um, or because like I don't know if you're familiar with David Hawking's work of Power versus Force, and it talks about levels of consciousness, and there's a concept about somebody at the higher level of consciousness counterbalance a lot of people at the negative level.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that, going to your shamanism work, is that something that shamanism teaches as well?
Well, I think everybody is making choices right now, and I agree with you. Some people are happy demonstrating and throwing rocks in the street, and some people are happier meditating in their room. And I don't think there is any good or bad action in that sense. Everybody needs to do what they feel called to do. And some people are warriors, some people are contemplative, some people are good with writing, are good with speaking, some people are good with action. So I think, it's really, I think all of us are involved in what's going on right now, and it's unprecedented. I mean, it's really a world war for real. I mean, every country is touched, every city is touched, every dimension of society is being touched. I mean, it's a war at all levels right now, a war of media, a war of people for people's soul. It's a war for everything, and everybody is fighting at the level they can or they feel like fighting.
Right. So it's
So
good versus
yeah,
evil, basically.
absolutely. And it's a war for people's souls. I mean, it's traumatic what's going on, and it's very insidious because it's going through the medias, it's going through fear, it's going through fake news. um, I don't think we can trust anything that's being said right now, honestly. I think the numbers are screwed. I think that the information we received is stories, not actual information. I think that, the fear is being placed into people's brains so that we will accept the unacceptable. We'll accept vaccines. We'll accept confinement. We'll
Yeah,
accept
okay. Let's go there. Let's go. Since you're going to vaccines, what do you think? Oh, before we go there, I want you. Can you say again the word screwed in your accent?
screwed. No matter how long I've lived in the States and I try to get rid of my accent, it's never going to happen. So I
So,
live with it now.
I knew this French girl, and she once told me in the movies they all talk like this, and they talk with the French accent. So when she did that, that's the moment I learned how to do it, because I don't know, it's something when for real, because
No,
it's
we have to accept who we are, and
that's it.
my accent is what it is, and it's not going to change. And I did try, and then I thought, why? This is my uniqueness, and I should embrace that. So I embrace my accent.
But you see what you did there? You gave up. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
I accepted.
Vaccines. So,
Yes,
do you think there should be a bigger protection, because they're trying? It seems to me they're trying to rush things through, right?
absolutely. You know what? I don't believe in vaccines. I believe in raising your immune system. And if you raise your immune system by being happy, positive, and of course, eating right, sleeping enough, drinking lots of water, avoiding drugs and alcohol, because vaccines are not going to replace the strength of the human spirit. And the human spirit is stronger. But if
Right.
we start to give our power away to vaccines, and they're playing, it's a sorcerer's apprentices, they don't really know. And some people have actually cured themselves of the corona in a few days. So it's not as deadly as they say it is to
Right. Well,
begin with.
the cure to someone with what? Just like eating healthy and just being a healthy mind.
Well, hot whiskey and honey to begin with.
Hot whiskey. Oh wow.
No, seriously. So, it's again, it's creating fear in people, and people are so susceptible to fear, but we have to see who is this serving? Because some people are becoming billionaires with that coronavirus, while other people are losing their jobs and having their lives destroyed. So we have to follow the money with all this. We have to look
Right.
beyond the appearance. And why are we being locked down? And how is wearing masks helping us? I mean, it's we were not created with masks, because we need to be able to breathe freely. We need to be able to release the toxins through our breath. And if you have a mask that's keeping that inside, then isn't that creating more toxicity in your body? If you are always hand sanitizing everything, I go to Peru every year. I've been going to Peru for 15 years. I was initiated by the Keros. Their water is filled with bacteria. If we drink tap water in Peru, even if we brush our teeth with tap water in Peru, we get so sick. It's horrible. And yet they have nothing. They can drink that water and they have nothing
They're immune.
because they're used to, they're immune because their system is strong. And the more you hand sanitize everything, the more susceptible to illnesses we're going to become. We need some microbes, we need some bacteria. So I'm not saying live in an unhealthy way, stop taking showers, stop washing your hands. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if we start, I mean, it's common sense. If we start to sanitize absolutely everything, if we start to wear masks, if we don't breathe fresh air because we're confined in our houses for months and in a small apartment in a city, what's going to happen? You know, I
Right.
mean, we're going to start catching everything that floats around. It's ridiculous.
So there's a lot of people protesting now uh, because of
That's
this
good.
thing that's happening.
I think we should protest. I don't think we should accept masks. I don't think we should accept confinement. I don't think we should accept vaccines. We shouldn't. I mean, why? Why? And look at what's in those vaccines. I mean, the animals they did some lab test on, it destroyed their immune system forever. I think those people who are going to take vaccines, they're going to be on a non-reversible course, and they're going to realize in a few years, oops, it created this. Oops, well,
Right.
too late now,
You know, here, I'm currently back home in Slovenia, and I heard on the radio that if some kids that are healthy and can't take the vaccine will not take it, that there will be some repercussions. So I'm like,
There
wow,
will.
this is
They're not going to make it mandatory, but then if you don't take the vaccine, you can't go to school. If you don't take the vaccine, you can't take a plane. If you don't take the vaccine, you can't get this job. And they're going to subtly, not so subtly, force people to accept the unacceptable. And we have to be very vigilant. We really
right.
do. It is a
The
war. We
the
are in a war right now.
the
It's a
thing
bigger
that
war
worries
of all.
me the thing that worries me if it changes the DNA, and that seems like big no. If it changes the DNA, that's like, wow, that's too
We're
much.
going to become robots. We are
I hope
going to stop being human. We're going to become hybrids. We're going to, our humanity is slowly being taken away from us. Our soul is being taken away from us. So this is the most dangerous war of all. We are at a time now that is a major crossroad in the evolution of humanity, and we have to be very vigilant. And I'm amazed to see how spiritual people even are completely asleep, and how they're not seeing the writing on the wall. And that's of concern. That's really of concern, because if we start to rebel en masse, if we start to say no to certain things, but we have to awaken. We can't afford ignorance. Is not bliss right now. It's not. Because if we stay asleep, we are going to be brought to the slaughter, and we have to wake up. It's very important. Very important.
it's everywhere. Well, by the way, this might get me in trouble, but I don't care because YouTube is
Okay.
starting to censor anything that's against the official narrative. But you know,
And
whatever.
that's the proof. If that is happening, I mean, in the States, which is supposed to be the country of freedom of speech, right? Well, if they start to censor Facebook, and I've had my Facebook censored, I posted a few videos that got censored saying this is fake information or this is not proven. Well, let people be, find their way with that. Who is saying that this is fake information? Who is saying that this is not right? I mean, I think that's proof in the pudding that that was correct, that was
Zuckerberg
right.
Zuckerberg is saying
But
that.
it's disturbing the intelligentsia. It's disturbing the people in power. It's disturbing the narrative that everybody wants us to, that the authorities wants us to believe.
Wow.
So we need to keep our critical sense. And if we're censored, then we're censored. I'd rather be censored than not speak the truth. I
But
really
yes, I'm.
like that.
But you know what it is that a lot of it pains me to say this, but a lot of spiritual people will go with whatever the government says, and if the government says this is good, they will believe it. So, but and as far as me, it's hard for me to know what is true, what is not. How much are masks helping for people that are sick? How much, like these things, and then you go into vaccines, and I'm like, I don't even like. I'm not a scientist. I don't even know what's going on, and then they're rushing this through, and then they're attacking core like that what's that there's a medication that Trump was touting, and at first they were saying before Trump they were saying it was a good drug, but then Trump was saying anyway. The media just flipped it around. Basically, it was okay drug,
Yeah,
and then
he
it was
was
not.
talking about this hydrochloroquine or
Yeah, yeah,
something that solves the malaria as well as zinc and vitamin C. Well, it is proven that yes, it does cure corona, and it is proven that when they put people on ventilators or however they call it, it kills them. So everything that is healthy is being said that it's not, and everything that is said it's real is not, and everything that is fake is real. I mean, pretty much right now, take the opposite and you'll know what is true and what is not.
yeah.
And
Well,
I think we have to
it's
use common sense. I mean, common sense has gone out the window. I think, when the whole pandemic, quote, quote, began, all of a sudden everybody is rushing to buy toilet paper. Why? I mean, I was in Finland. I was in Helsinki when the pandemics began. And within days, there were whole walls that were empty. All the paper towels and toilet paper had disappeared. And when I arrived in Phoenix, in Arizona, I saw, when people opened their garage, half their garage was toilet paper. It's like, what? Who said that? What is this about? But it's like I think one of the first symptoms of the corona was that it melted brain cells. That's what we had, honestly, to begin with. So and it's like common sense. Use your common sense. It's like people are like so brain dead right now. It's like they just sit in front of their TV and they just take it all in. Oh, the government says that it must be true. No critical sense whatsoever.
but I
That's why I
think
ditched TV a long time ago.
but
A
I think
long.
that's
I haven't
the
had a TV in like forever.
But I think that's required for people to be fed things that are not true, and then they have an awakening. So I think, that's why I think things are gonna get worse before it gets better, because people need to be exposed to it, and then once, if they realize they're being lied to, then there's a U.S. Political movement called Walk Away, where people are like, well, this is I was I was liberal for a long time, but now they're becoming vicious and all that. And I'll question one little thing, and I get viciously attacked. And this happens. Okay, we went. I didn't expect we're gonna go this route. I wanted to talk about shamanism.
Neither did I.
If you want to mention it a little bit, because I'm curious as well. So, how did you get originally into shamanism?
Well, I was born in Finland, and even though we lived all over the world, because my father was a journalist, and he was posted in different countries. So every 3 years we changed languages, cultures, schools, friends, everything. Um, but every summer we came back to Finland and we lived by the lakes and did some saunas and picked berries in the forest and walked in the forest and picked, stones. So I was always naturally, and Finland is the land of the shaman. So I was always naturally in that environment. I knew about the Kalevala. My father gave me the Kalevala in 3 languages. He really wanted me to read the Kalevala,
What is
which
that?
is
What is that?
epic, the epic story of the Finns. And actually, it is at the basis of the Lord of the Rings. Tolkien fell in love with the Kalevala, and it's a very interesting esoteric story of shamans, and it's a very complex story that was put together by Non Ruth, who was a doctor in the 19th century in Finland. And those runes were sang in the cottages, in the houses, you know, century after century. And he realized that those people were dying, and he made it his life mission to go to all those huts and start to record and write down all those runes, which became the Kalevala. So, so it's a story. It's a very epic story of shamans and all sorts of things that happen, and there's the mystical places, and there's the sampo, and the sampo is this thing that you know, whoever has it will never lack food or money or health, and nobody can describe what the sampo looks like. I mean, there's all, it's quite an elaborate story. So anyway, shamanism was always part of my life. And then I started reading the books of Lynn Andrews, and I was totally in love with those books, who was initiated by those shaman women in Canada. And I actually met Lynn Andrews when I moved to Los Angeles. She was one of the very first people I met. And as time goes, and then one day when I was 16 years old, I saw a picture of Machu Picchu, and I fell in a trance, and I knew I had lived there, and I knew one day I would go there. And sure enough, it took several decades for that to happen. But I met a Colombian who knew Peru very well, who spoke Spanish. At the time, I did not speak Spanish, and we became, you know, friends. And he was going to Peru, and I begged him to take me with him. And we went to Peru, and it was supposed to be a one week trip. You know, I didn't even have my computer with me. I just had my backpack, and it was just 1 week. And that 1 week ended up being 3 months, because we got in a head-on train collision in a jungle on 24th of December 2004. And long story short, he had 3 broken ribs. I had nothing. And the Kiros, who are a tribe they say they come from the lineage of the Incas, which I have a few doubts about, because they are very short and the Incas were very tall, but that's what they say. Anyway, there was always a Kero waiting for me outside of the hotel. And they started bringing me to different places and started going through initiations. And then I became the godmother of 3 Kero children. And you know, and after those 3 months, I didn't quite understand what was going on at first. And when I went back, I was living in Arizona at the time. When I went back to Arizona, I you know, I was changed. I was physically changed. I was mentally changed. Um, Something had happened to me. And then I went back 6 months later to Peru, and it continued. And then the Keros, you know, started asking me to bring people to Peru, and then they started asking me to create a school, a shamanic school. And I went through all sorts of initiations, and all sorts of crazy things started to happen. And I was a reluctant shaman from day one, because I did not imagine I could bring anybody to Peru, and I could not imagine I could even teach shamanism. And now I have those schools in Phoenix and Helsinki. Actually, you know, I have already 2 schools that graduated. I have graduate students, and um, and it's crazy how it all unfolded. But they recognized me as being an Inca princess, but also the reincarnation of an Inca princess, but also being the reincarnation of the most powerful Sha woman in Atlantis. So all these
Wow.
things just sort of happened, and I just kept going with the flow, even though I had a lot of reluctance at many stages of this evolution. Not so much in the sense of being initiated, but in the sense of teaching, bringing people to Peru, because Peru is not an easy place, because of the altitude, because of the water, because of a lot of things in Peru. I mean, it's not like going to Paris or London. It's a whole different story going to Peru. But it's an amazing country. The Peruvians are very sweet, wonderful people, and now it has become like another home to me.
So what with shamanism? Uh, what are some of the craziest things you're able to do? Because I myself don't know much about shamanism. So if you can maybe like I know it's something to do with spirituality, but it's different because you're dealing with some kind of energies, initiations, that's lineage. Uh,
Well, I think to me, shamanism is really the original indigenous psychotherapy using drums, rattles, feathers, bells, and stones. So it sounds weird to speak about it like that, but it's really about how, the goal of shamanism is to become as transparent as possible, that we're not projecting our shadow on everybody we meet, and that we have, not to say that shamans are perfect people, we're not, but we have at least taken responsibility for ourselves, and we are constantly bettering ourselves, and we are as transparent as possible. And the shaman is the one who works also with dreams and who journeys through different worlds. So there's three worlds according to the Keros: the underworld, the middle world, the upper world. And different things happen in those worlds, and there are different guardians in each world. And these are real places. They are not figments of our imagination. Every time you go to the underworld, you're going to sometimes encounter things that you have never seen before, and you become a tracker. Also, you start to track reality. So if an animal crosses your path, depending on what you're thinking or feeling at that time, it's going to give you a certain answer or certain indication of something. Everything has meaning, everything has a soul in shamanism. Trees have magic and have a soul, animals have magic, have a soul. They each have a specific medicine that they bring us. And we live in a world where everything is alive and everything communicates with everything. And we can learn and increase our wisdom and grow through all these um, experiences.
right. Do you think having animals around in your house it is essential to have at least, or maybe plants, because you have like if you're in apartments all day long, you need some kind of different life forms, right?
We do, and we need to be connected to nature, because if we think about it, we live in apartments where heat and light are separate. We have heaters and we have light bulbs, but in nature, the sun is both heat and light. So we are living in environments that are very separated from nature. Like, for example, in ancient times, we would go to sleep when the sun sets and
Right.
we would wake up when the sun was rising. And now with electricity, we can be awake until wee hours of the night and wake up, later. Or so our rhythm, we are not in touch with our natural rhythms anymore, and that's a problem, and that makes people disconnected. We're not even, I mean, if you think of skyrise or even apartments, if you live on the second, on the third, the fourth floor, you're not in touch with the ground. We never really walk barefoot in the park, and we should walk barefoot in the grass at least 20 minutes a day, just to
Right.
ground ourselves. So
Have you
we're
seen those
living,
grounding beds? There's
yeah,
products you
yeah,
can buy where
yeah.
you have a mattress and then you plug it in, but the plug is just using the ground, and then you're
Yeah.
grounded. Do you think that that's helpful?
Of course it's helpful, but you see, the problem is that we are needing to create devices to recreate nature. I mean, how crazy is that? Instead, like the Keros, they sleep on the floor, on Mother Earth. For them, Pachamama is their mother, and they don't want, it's not that they can't have a mattress, but they don't want it. They want to sleep on the floor. They want to embrace Mother Earth. They want to be feeling the beat of her heart. And we have become so disconnected. People are just cutting trees. They don't care. They don't realize that these are living beings, and that those trees are screaming and crying. I mean, we are so, we go to the store and we buy fruits and vegetables or meat, and we don't have to go and kill the animal ourselves. If we did, probably everybody would be vegetarian, or 90% of the population would be vegetarian.
Right, right.
So we are so disconnected, so disconnected. We use products on our skin that are toxic. We use toxic products, to clean our house, so toxic products to clean our clothes, water that's toxic to wash ourselves and to drink. I mean, it's unbelievable
How do you
how
wash your clothes? Do you use natural, organic?
as I can, yes, as much as I can. But of course, we are products of society, and we can't be entirely green and ecological. We can't. It's impossible. Otherwise, we go back to living, a
In
more
a cave?
barbaric life.
Yeah.
So we have to make some compromise, but at the same time, I love it. Throwing garbage in Finland is an adventure on its own, because there is a can for glass, there's a can for paper, there's a can for cardboard, there's a can for glass, there's a can for metal, there's a can for organic. I mean, you really have to dissociate everything you throw in at least 12 different cans, and
Really? Wow,
that's
12.
really remarkable. That's really remarkable, and it should be like that everywhere, and it isn't.
Here's maybe four, I think, but that's all right.
In the US,
Um,
it's just two.
right, right. So
So
talk a little bit about what kind of, if people go on your website, the michellekarén.com, I will put it the link on YouTube or Facebook, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, it'll probably be in the description. So you offering astrology readings?
readings, yeah, I do personal sessions, live on either Zoom or on the phone if you live in the States, or on Skype. And these are personal readings. So I talk about, the essence of your past lives, the purpose of this lifetime, the cycles you are in, and some can go way in the past and the future, and of course your personality and understanding, the strengths and weaknesses. I also offer shamanic sessions, private shamanic sessions. So you never know what's going to happen in those. It can be a soul retrieval, it can be removal of entities, it can be healing the family tree. I mean, there can be all sorts of things.
Is that
And
done
I
through
also,
Zoom, or it have to be
yes,
done in person?
also,
Okay.
no, I don't do anything I mean, I do it live, but on Zoom, because I travel so much that it's very difficult for me to do it in person. So I never do it in person. And I found that it's actually much more powerful if we do it on the phone or on Skype, because we are, it's like I'm able to dive deeper into the person's psyche. And I also have a shamanic school. I have actually two shamanic schools, one in Phoenix, Arizona, and one in Helsinki, Finland. And these are professional shamanic schools where I transmit rites, initiations, and I share what I learned from the Keros healing modalities, but also we work on ourselves at the same time, and go through the medicine wheel. And I do mystic journeys. So my upcoming mystical journeys are to Bosnia, the pyramids of Bosnia, the pyramids in Egypt, the southeast of Finland, and this is based on the Kalevala, and Peru, and where we work with the Keros.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground. It went a bit longer than I expected, but I think it was very interesting.
Thank
So
you.
there she is, a little controversial today, Michelle Karén. I think that's not the French pronunciation, but it'll
Doesn't
be okay.
matter, pronounce in every language. So depending on the language, you can pronounce it however you want.
All right. Thank you for being on the show. And if you guys are watching and listening, thank you for watching and listening. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.